After 15 years of cutting me out of family reunions, they had the nerve to show up at my mansion. I opened the door, stayed calm, and watched the color drain from their faces. Just a few days ago, my doorbell rang and my entire world, the one I'd so painstakingly built, shattered and then rebuilt itself in a single, gut-wrenching moment. Because there they were, standing on the other side of my security gate, the very people who'd thrown me away 15 years ago, now crawling back with faces etched in a mix of desperate hope and awe. I'm Olivia. I'm 38 and a successful CEO of a tech empire, living in a $15 million Atherton mansion I built from absolutely nothing. But as I stared at my family through that security camera, all the old scars that success could never quite heal ripped open again. It felt like a lifetime ago, but also just yesterday, that my childhood unfolded in a middle-class neighborhood in Chicago. On the surface, we were the perfect American family, a 4-bedroom colonial, a white picket fence, a golden retriever named Buddy. My dad, Walter, was an engineer, my mom, Elaine, a beloved third-grade teacher. But that picture-perfect facade? It was nothing but a lie, especially for me. I was the youngest, the afterthought. My brother, Philip, 7 years my senior, was the golden boy, football star, straight A's, charming, everyone's favorite. My sister, Sophia, 5 years older, was the beauty, a talented pianist and debate team captain. And then there was me. From my earliest memories, I felt the difference. Their achievements were met with praise and celebration, mine with indifference or, worse, criticism. When I brought home straight A's, my mom would just nod, that's what we expect. For Philip or Sophia, it was a special dinner, a party. Why can't you be more like your sister? My mom would sigh when I struggled with piano, reminding me Sophia was playing Mozart at my age. My dad was no better. He was at every one of Philip's football games, boasting to his colleagues. But when I qualified for the state science fair in 5th grade, he was too busy with work. Science isn't really a spectator sport, Olivia, he'd dismissively say. I later found out his important meeting was just Philip's practice game. My 10th birthday was the cruelest punch to the gut. My mom had promised a small party. I'd spent weeks making invitations by hand. The morning of, my mom announced at breakfast, Olivia, there's been a change of plans. Philip has a championship game today, and we all need to be there. My heart absolutely cratered. But Mom, my friends are coming in 2 hours. Don't be selfish, my dad cut in. Family comes first. That phrase, family comes first, would haunt me for years, a bitter joke, because it never applied when I needed their support. The party was canceled. I called each friend, tears stinging my eyes. Then I was dragged to Philip's game, forgotten in the bleachers for 3 hours while my parents cheered and Sophia socialized. No one sang happy birthday. No one even mentioned it. We got home. No cake, no presents, just leftover pizza from Philip's celebration. I ate alone in my room, silent tears dripping onto my plate. Sophia was perhaps the most brutal. As a young teenager, she found ways to psychologically torment me. She'd invite friends over, then deliberately exclude me, locking me out, whispering secrets that stopped the moment I entered. She'd borrow my things, return them damaged or not at all. When I complained, she'd play the innocent victim, and my parents always believed her. Philip wasn't actively mean, just profoundly indifferent. As the big brother, he could have intervened, but he stayed out of it, lost in his own world of sports and popularity. The only beacon of love was my grandma Eleanor, my mother's mother. She lived an hour away, but her monthly visits were when I finally felt seen. You have a special spark, Olivia, she'd say as we baked cookies. One day, the world will see what I see in you. She bought me books, attended my science fairs, sat front row, beaming. With her, I didn't have to compete for love, it was freely given. At school, I excelled. Teachers praised my intelligence, but at home, it was minimized. Book smarts will only get you so far, my father would say. You need social skills like your sister. I tried everything to win their approval. Debate team like Sophia? They were too busy for regionals. Soccer? My dad just commented girls' sports weren't as competitive. By high school, I resigned myself to invisibility. Education became my ticket to freedom. I worked part-time at the library, saving every dollar. I applied for scholarships in secret, determined to forge my own path. When acceptance letters from Yale and Stanford arrived, my parents seemed surprised. Those schools are very expensive, my father's first comment, and very far from home. I heard the relief in his voice, confirming I was an obligation, not a beloved daughter. My heart broke, but my resolve hardened. Little did I know, the worst betrayal, the cruelest revelation, was still to come. The moment that shattered any remaining illusions about my family hit when I was 23. I'd graduated from Stanford with honors, a computer science degree in cybersecurity, and secured a job at a tech startup in San Francisco. I was finally building my independence, maybe even earning their respect. Then came the call, Grandma Eleanor had passed away unexpectedly. I was absolutely devastated. The only person who had truly loved me was gone. I flew back to Chicago immediately, my heart heavy with grief. At the funeral, I sat alone in the front row, while my parents, Philip and Sophia, huddled together, a picture of united family grief. No one checked on me, even though they knew how close I was to Grandma Eleanor. Afterward, everyone gathered at my parents' house for the reading of the will. I sat quietly, flipping through an old photo album of Grandma Eleanor, trying to process my loss. When the lawyer arrived, we all gathered in the dining room. Most assets were distributed as expected: the house to my mother, the car to Philip, the jewelry to Sophia. Then came the surprise. To my beloved granddaughter, Olivia, the lawyer read, "I leave my grandmother's ruby ring and the sum of $5,000. You were always special to me, and I know you will make me proud." The room fell silent. Then my mother scoffed. $5,000 and her old ring? That's it? I was stunned. I hadn't expected anything and was deeply touched. The ruby ring was a family heirloom. Its sentiment meant everything. My father's face turned an alarming red. "This is outrageous," he sputtered. "Eleanor always did favor Olivia, for some reason." "For some reason?" I echoed, finding my voice. "Maybe because she was the only one who ever showed me any kindness in this family." That's when everything exploded. Years of resentment, years of secrets, came pouring out. "You want to talk about kindness?" my father shouted. "We took you in when no one else would. We gave you a home, an education, opportunities most kids only dream of. And this is the gratitude we get." Confusion washed over me. "Took me in? What was he talking about?" My mother shot him a warning look. But it was too late. The words were out. "You're not even our daughter," he spat. "You were 2 years old when we adopted you after your mother died. Lisa was Elaine's college roommate, had you out of wedlock, then got herself killed in a car accident. No father in the picture. No other family willing to take you. So we did, out of the goodness of our hearts." The room spun. Adopted? This couldn't be real. I looked at my mother, silently pleading for her to deny it. Instead, she just sighed. "We were going to tell you when you were older, but then it never seemed like the right time. 23 years, and it had never been the right time to tell me the truth about my own identity. All those years of feeling like I didn't belong, like I was different somehow, suddenly made terrible, agonizing sense. So I've been living a lie my entire life?" I whispered. "Does everyone know except me?" "Most of the family knows," Sophia said with a shrug. "It wasn't exactly a secret. We just didn't talk about it. Not a secret to anyone except me, the person whose life it was." I felt sick to my stomach. "Why did Grandma Eleanor leave the ring to Olivia anyway?" Philip asked the lawyer. "It should stay with blood family." Blood family. Those words cut through me like a knife. Mrs. Eleanor specifically mentioned that Olivia should have the ring because, in her words, true family is about love, not blood. The lawyer replied uncomfortably. That set my father off again. That old woman always tried to undermine our parenting, filling Olivia's head with nonsense, making her think she was special when we were trying to raise her to be realistic about her place in the world. "My place?" I asked, my voice rising. "And what exactly is my place in this family?" "You should be grateful we took you in at all," Sophia interjected. "Do you know how many orphans end up in the system? You had privileges most of them could only dream of." I looked at my sister, seeing her clearly for the first time. Privileges like being reminded constantly that I wasn't as good as you or Philip. Like having my birthdays forgotten and my achievements ignored? Those kinds of privileges? "See, this is exactly why we never told you," my mother said. "We knew you'd react emotionally instead of rationally." "Finding out my entire life has been a lie seems like a reasonable thing to be emotional about," I retorted. My father stood up, towering over the table. "That is enough. I will not have you speaking to your mother that way under my roof. If you cannot show some gratitude for everything we have done for you, then perhaps you should leave." I looked around the table at the faces of the people I had called family for 23 years. None of them came to my defense. Not even Philip, who had always been the least antagonistic. In that moment, I made my decision. "Fine," I said quietly, gathering my purse. "I will go. But first, I want to know one thing. Did you ever love me at all? Or was I just a charity case you regretted taking on?" The silence that followed was all the answer I needed. I walked out of that house and never looked back. The exclusion became official. I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving that year, or Christmas, or any family gathering. I saw photos on social media, family reunions, holiday celebrations, milestone events, all without me. Sophia would post pictures with captions like, "Complete family gathering," or "So blessed to have everyone I love in one place," pointed reminders that I wasn't part of everyone. There were cold, formal emails from my father telling me not to contact them, to respect the family's privacy, as if I were some stranger. The ultimate pain came when I saw photos of my parents proudly attending Philip's wedding and later, the birth of Sophia's first child. Moments I should have been part of, erased as thoroughly as if I'd never existed. With that $5,000 from Grandma Eleanor and her ruby ring as my only inheritance, I cut all ties. I vowed to build a life so successful that they would one day regret throwing me away. Little did I know just how dramatically that vow would be fulfilled. With just that $5,000 and the ruby ring, which I swore I'd never sell, I arrived in San Francisco, determined to forge a new beginning. The money wouldn't last long, so I had to be strategic. I found a tiny apartment in a less desirable neighborhood, sharing with two other young women I found through a coffee shop housing board. My portion of the rent ate nearly half my savings immediately. Alice was a nurse, Jordan a grad student, both too busy to pry, which suited me perfectly. My room was cramped, barely fitting a twin bed and a small desk. The kitchen was barely functional, and we shared one bathroom. It was a far cry from my comfortable suburban home, but it was mine. There was freedom in that. I secured an entry-level job as a technical support specialist at a small software company. The pay was minimal, just covering expenses, but it was a foot in the door of the tech industry. My days were mundane, answering calls from frustrated users, troubleshooting basic problems. It didn't use my education or skills, but I approached it with fierce determination. "You're overqualified," my supervisor remarked, "but I appreciate your work ethic. Keep it up, and there will be opportunities." I didn't want gradual advancement. Every night after my shift, I'd return to my tiny room and spend hours teaching myself programming languages, cybersecurity protocols. I enrolled in free online courses, participated in coding challenges, built small projects for my portfolio. Sleep became a luxury. But every hour was an investment in my future. To save money, I lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. I cut my own hair, shopped at thrift stores, walked miles to avoid public transport. Every dollar saved was a dollar keeping me independent from the family that had rejected me. 6 months into my self-imposed exile, I attended a free tech workshop at the public library on emerging threats in cybersecurity. The presenter was Professor Diana Chin, a renowned expert from Berkeley. I sat in the back, absorbing every word, taking notes. When it ended, I gathered my courage and approached her with a specific question about encryption protocols. Professor Chin looked surprised. "That's an insightful observation," she said. "Most people wouldn't have caught that nuance. Are you working in the field?" I explained my background, carefully omitting the personal family details. Something about her kind eyes and attentive listening made me feel seen in a way I hadn't since Grandma Eleanor. "You have a good mind for this work," she told me. "I'm hosting a hackathon next month at Berkeley. You should come." That hackathon changed everything. Working with strangers, I helped identify a major vulnerability in a popular financial application. Our solution won third place and, more importantly, caught the attention of industry professionals. Professor Diana became my unofficial mentor, inviting me to events, recommending resources. "You have a unique perspective on security," she told me. "You see vulnerabilities others miss because you think differently." Under her guidance, I began developing a concept for a new approach to data protection, focusing on behavioral patterns rather than passwords. It had potential, but turning it into a product required resources I didn't have. "You should seek investors," Diana suggested. "This could revolutionize personal data security." The world of venture capital was completely foreign. I spent weeks researching, preparing a business plan, practicing my pitch. Diana introduced me to contacts, but responses were lukewarm. "Interesting concept, but no track record. Come back with a prototype." We invest in founders with more experience. Rejection after rejection piled up. 27 investors turned me down. Each dismissal echoed the rejections from my family. But unlike then, I refused to accept I wasn't good enough. To sustain myself, I took a second job, bartending at a popular tech hangout. The irony wasn't lost on me, serving drinks to the successful entrepreneurs I so desperately wanted to join. The late-night shifts were exhausting after full days at my tech support job, but they provided income and, unexpectedly, networking opportunities. One night, a customer named Travis left a generous tip after we talked about digital privacy. He returned the next week, asking more questions about my background and ideas. After several such conversations, he revealed he was an angel investor specializing in cybersecurity. "I've been testing you," he admitted. "You're the real deal. Let me see your business plan." 2 weeks later, I received $200,000 to develop a prototype. It was a fraction of what established startups received, but it was enough to quit tech support and focus. I kept bartending weekends for extra cash and to stay grounded. The development was grueling. I rented a tiny office, worked 16 to 18-hour days, 7 days a week. Technical challenges I hadn't anticipated forced me to learn new skills on the fly. There were moments of doubt, when code wouldn't work or a security protocol failed testing. During those dark moments, I'd hold Grandma Eleanor's ruby ring, remembering her words, "You have a special spark, Olivia." The loneliness was perhaps the hardest part. I had acquaintances, but no close friends, no one to celebrate small victories or offer comfort. I'd built walls after my family's betrayal, afraid to let anyone close enough to hurt me again. Some nights, I cried myself to sleep, exhausted and overwhelmed, questioning if I was on a fool's errand, trying to prove my worth to people who didn't care. But each morning, I got up and returned to my code, driven by a determination that grew stronger with every obstacle. After 8 months, I had a working prototype. It was rough, but demonstrated the core functionality. Travis arranged a demo for more established investors, and this time, they were impressed. This approach to behavioral authentication is genuinely innovative, one commented. This could be a game changer for consumer security. That demonstration secured another round of funding, enough to hire 3 employees and move to a proper office. Secure Now was officially born, the first step toward building the empire that would make my family regret their decision. The launch of Secure Now's first product blew past my most optimistic projections. Our behavioral authentication system grabbed major tech publications' attention. TechCrunch called it a revolutionary approach. Within 6 months, we had licensing agreements with 3 Fortune 500 companies. As the company grew, so did my confidence. We expanded from our small office to a full floor in a downtown San Francisco building. My team of 3 grew to 15, then 30, then over 100 employees in 2 years. Each hire was carefully selected, not just for technical skills, but for passion and integrity. I was building more than a company, I was creating the family I had never had. You've created something special here, Diana remarked during a visit. She'd transitioned from mentor to true friend, one of the few who knew the truth about my past. And I don't just mean the technology. She was right. Secure Now's culture was built on respect, collaboration, and recognition. Every milestone celebrated, every birthday acknowledged. I made sure no one ever felt invisible or unappreciated, the way I had for so many years. Our second product, a secure communication platform, attracted government agencies and international corporations concerned about industrial espionage. The contracts that followed pushed Secure Now's valuation past $100 million just 3 years after founding. Financial success changed my personal life. I moved from my shared apartment to a luxury condo overlooking the bay. My thrift store wardrobe gave way to designer clothes, not out of vanity, but because I'd learned appearance matters in the business world. My 10-year-old laptop became cutting-edge tech, my bus passed a Tesla. Yet, despite these material improvements, an emptiness remained. Each night, I'd return to my beautiful but silent condo and feel utterly alone. Success, it turned out, was a cold companion. On Secure Now's 5th anniversary, we secured our biggest deal yet, a $200 million contract to overhaul security infrastructure for a consortium of international banks. The office celebration was jubilant, champagne flowing, bonuses announced. But when the party ended, and everyone went home to their families, I returned alone to my condo. As I sipped wine on the balcony, I found myself scrolling through social media, a habit I'd mostly broken, but indulged in moments of weakness. There was a new post from Sophia, a family reunion at our parents' lake house. Annual Sullivan family tradition. So blessed to have everyone together, the caption read. Everyone except me, of course. I closed the app and made a decision. If I couldn't have the family I was born into, I would create a life so full and meaningful that their absence would no longer matter. The next day, I began searching for a permanent home, a sanctuary. Weeks later, I found it, a sprawling, $15 million estate in Atherton, Silicon Valley's most exclusive neighborhood. 7 bedrooms, a guest house, a pool, extensive gardens across 3 acres. Are you sure about this? My financial advisor asked. It's a significant investment for a single person. I'm sure, I replied. This isn't just a house, it's a statement. I spent 6 months renovating it to my exact specifications. The formal dining room became a state-of-the-art home office. One wing transformed into a library, thousands of books fulfilling my childhood dream of a personal library, like in Beauty and the Beast. Each room was designed to reflect my personality, warm and inviting, elegant but comfortable. Unlike my stark San Francisco condo, this house was meant for living, for making memories. The crown jewel was the garden. I hired a renowned landscape architect to create an English garden with winding paths, hidden benches, and year-round blooms. It was the kind of garden Grandma Eleanor would have loved. I placed a small memorial bench with her name in a quiet corner, surrounded by her favorite flowers. As Secure Now continued to expand, now with over 500 employees and offices in 5 countries, I consciously balanced professional success with personal growth. I joined charitable boards, focusing on foster children and orphans. I established a scholarship fund for computer science students from disadvantaged backgrounds. I mentored young women entering tech, determined to help them avoid the obstacles I'd faced. Through these activities, I slowly built a circle of friends who knew nothing of my past and accepted me for who I was now. There was Travis, my first investor, now a trusted advisor and sailing companion. Diana, of course, a constant presence, bringing her husband and children to dinners at my home. Jordan, my former roommate, now taught literature at Stanford. We met monthly for coffee and books. My executive team, Layla, my brilliant CTO, Marcus, my CFO, Derek, my COO, they had started as employees, but became people I trusted and respected. This carefully constructed family of choice helped fill some of the emptiness. But there were still moments when the past crept in. Late at night, I'd sometimes look through an old photo album, one of the few possessions I'd taken from my parents' house. The smiling faces in those photos seemed to belong to strangers now. 10 years after founding Secure Now, I took the company public. The IPO was wildly successful, making me a billionaire overnight, at least on paper. My face appeared on business magazine covers, Security Queen, how Olivia Sullivan built a tech empire from nothing. If my biological family saw these articles, they never reached out. Their silence was both a relief and a lingering wound. On the 15th anniversary of the day I was cast out, I hosted a charity gala at my Atherton estate. The event raised over $10 million for foster care organizations, a deeply personal cause. As I stood addressing the crowd of Silicon Valley elites, politicians, and celebrities who had paid thousands to attend, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey. From a confused, hurt young woman with just $5,000 and a ruby ring, I had transformed into one of the most powerful women in tech. The mansion, the respect of my peers, the impact of my charity work, all testimony to what I'd achieved despite, or perhaps because of, being discarded by those who should have loved me most. Yet, for all my success, a small, wounded part of me still wondered why I had never been enough for them. That part was about to get an unexpected, jaw-dropping answer. The very next day, a quiet Sunday morning I cherished, the tranquility was shattered by the chime of my security system. Visitors at the front gate. Annoyed, I picked up my tablet. What I saw made my coffee cup slip from my fingers and shatter on the stone floor. There they were, standing at my gate like ghosts from a past life. My father, Walter, now in his 70s, his dark hair completely gray, his tall frame stooped. My mother, Elaine, beside him, her face more lined, but still wearing that familiar pearl necklace. Philip stood slightly behind, heavier, his athletic build softened. And Sophia, immaculately dressed, her blonde hair expertly highlighted, with 2 children clutching her hands, a boy of about 10, a girl of 8. 15 years. 15 years of silence, of exclusion, of pretending I didn't exist. And now they were here, at the entrance to the life I had built without them. My first instinct was to ignore them, to let them wait until they gave up. But curiosity won. What could possibly have brought them here after all this time? What could they want from me now? With trembling hands, I pressed the intercom. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "Olivia, it's Mom and Dad," my mother's voice crackled through the speaker. "And Philip and Sophia. We were hoping we could talk to you." Talk to me after 15 years? I should have said no, told them to leave. But some deeply buried part of me, that little girl who'd always longed for her family's approval, made me press the button to open the gate. I rushed to my bedroom, pulling on jeans and a simple blouse, running a brush through my hair. I didn't want to look like I'd made an effort, but neither did I want to appear caught off guard. By the time the doorbell rang, I was outwardly composed. I opened the door with what I hoped was mild interest, not the emotional turmoil raging inside. The 5 of them stood on my doorstep, looking up at the grand facade of my home with poorly concealed awe. "Olivia," my mother said, stepping forward, arms outstretched as if to embrace me. "You look wonderful." I stepped back, avoiding the hug. "Thank you," I replied coolly. "This is unexpected." "We've been trying to find the right time to reach out," my father said, his voice softer than I remembered. "When we saw the article about your charity gala in the Wall Street Journal, we thought it might be time to reconnect." The Wall Street Journal. Of course. They hadn't come because they missed me or regretted their actions. They'd come because they'd seen evidence of my wealth and success in a national publication. "Please, come in," I said, hospitality on autopilot even as my mind processed this revelation. I led them through the grand foyer, past marble floors and a sweeping staircase, into the main living room where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens and pool. "This is quite a home," Philip whistled softly, taking in the custom furnishings and original artwork. "Thank you," I replied, simply gesturing to the Italian leather sofas. "Can I offer you something to drink? Coffee? Water?" "Coffee would be lovely," my mother said, perching on the edge of the sofa as if afraid to fully commit to sitting in my home. I used the excuse of preparing coffee to escape to the kitchen, leaning against the counter, taking deep breaths. I had imagined this scenario countless times, fantasized about what I'd say. But now I felt unprepared, vulnerable in a way I hadn't in years. When I returned with a tray of coffee in my finest porcelain, A petty display of wealth I couldn't resist. The children were exploring the room while the adults sat in awkward silence. "These are my children," Sophia said as I sat down the tray. "Jack and Emma." I nodded to the children, who regarded me with curious eyes. "Hello," I said, unsure how to interact with these niece and nephew I'd never met. Had Sophia told them about me? Did they know they had an aunt who'd been erased? "They're beautiful," I said, because it seemed like the expected response. "We've missed you, Olivia," my mother said, tears welling, a performance almost convincing. "All these years, we've thought about you. Have you?" I asked, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling beneath. "That's interesting, because I haven't received so much as a birthday card or a Christmas greeting in 15 years. We didn't know how to reach out," my father said. "After the way things ended, we didn't know if you'd want to hear from us." "You could have tried," I pointed out. "My email address hasn't changed. My company isn't exactly difficult to find." "We've been following your career," Philip interjected. "Reading about your success. We're all very proud." "Proud?" I repeated the word, tasting bitter on my tongue. "Now you're proud?" "Not when I graduated with honors. Not when I started my company. Not when I needed support and encouragement. Only now, when I have a mansion and a billion-dollar company. Now you're proud." An uncomfortable silence fell. The children sensed the tension and moved closer to their mother, who put protective arms around them. "Olivia," my father said after a moment, clearing his throat. "We didn't just come to reconnect, though that is certainly our hope. We also came because, well, we could use your help." And there it was. The real reason. "What kind of help?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Financial help," my father admitted, having the grace to look embarrassed. "My company went bankrupt last year. The economic downturn hit us hard, and at my age, finding new employment has been challenging. I lost my job in the tech sector 6 months ago," Philip added. "Been freelancing, but it's not stable, and I'm going through a divorce. Harold left me for his secretary." "Classic story," Sophia said, her voice dropping to ensure her children didn't hear. "The settlement is still being negotiated, and my lawyer bills are astronomical." I looked at each of them. These people who had cast me out when I had nothing, returning now that I had everything. The audacity was breathtaking. "We were thinking," my father continued, apparently mistaking my silence for consideration, "that perhaps you could help us restart the family business. A loan of about $2 million would allow us to reestablish ourselves and create something the whole family could be part of." "The whole family?" I repeated. "Yes," my mother said eagerly. "You could be part of it too, of course, though I imagine you're too busy with your own company. But you could be a silent partner, and it would help secure your niece and nephew's future." She gestured to the children, a calculated move to pull at heartstrings I wasn't sure I still possessed. "We would pay you back, of course," my father added, with interest. "And perhaps you could consider allocating some shares in your company to the family trust. Keep it all in the family, so to speak." The nausea I felt was overwhelming. The sheer nerve of them to walk into my home after 15 years of silence and ask not just for money, but for a piece of the company I had built entirely without their help or support. To speak of family as if it were a concept that still included me when it suited their financial needs. "I see," was all I said, my mind already formulating a response they would never forget. I rose from my seat with deliberate calm, smoothing the fabric of my jeans. The room was charged with tension, my family watching me with expressions ranging from hope to thinly veiled calculation. "Please make yourselves comfortable," I said with practiced hospitality. "The coffee is imported from a small cooperative in Colombia. I visited the farms myself last year." This casual mention of international travel, of a lifestyle where one could personally visit coffee producers halfway across the world, was not lost on them. My father's eyes narrowed slightly, recalculating the extent of my wealth. Sophia glanced around the room with renewed interest, as if mentally appraising each piece of furniture and artwork. I excused myself briefly and returned with a leather-bound album and my laptop. Sitting them both on the coffee table, I resumed my seat. "Before we discuss any financial arrangements," I said, my voice even, "I think we should catch up on the past 15 years. After all, we are family, right?" I emphasized the word family, just enough to make it clear I recognized the irony. My mother nodded eagerly. "Yes, of course. We have so much to catch up on. Let's start with family gatherings," I suggested, opening the album. "I've been keeping track of them, you know." Their confused expressions turned to discomfort as I revealed the first page, a printed screenshot of a Facebook post from 15 years ago, shortly after our falling out. It showed a Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house, the caption reading, "Grateful for family today and always." "This was 3 months after you told me never to contact you again," I said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "I noticed all of you were there. Plus Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda and their children. Cousin Jessica even flew in from Denver." I turned the page. Christmas, same year. Nothing better than having the whole family together for the holidays. I looked at my mother. "That's a lovely treat, Mom. Did you use the ornaments I made in elementary school, or did those get thrown out along with my baby pictures? Page after page, I showed them evidence of the life they had lived without me. Birthday celebrations, graduations, weddings, baby showers for Sophia's children, anniversary parties for my parents, all documented on social media with captions about complete family gatherings and everyone we love in one place. Why do you have all these? Sophia asked, her voice strained. Know your enemy? I replied with a small smile. A basic principle of security. You taught me that, Dad. Probably the most valuable lesson you ever gave me. Always know who you're dealing with. I closed the album and opened my laptop. Now, let's move on to more recent history. I turned the screen toward them, showing an email from my father dated 12 years ago. I read it aloud, my voice steady. Olivia, I must insist that you cease any attempts to contact family members. Your mother was very upset by your Christmas card. We have moved on with our lives and expect you to respect our privacy. Walter Sullivan. I looked up at my father. That was in response to the only Christmas card I ever sent after leaving. A simple card wishing you happy holidays. No requests for reconciliation, no accusations, just a card. That was your response. He had the decency to look ashamed, staring down at his hands. And this, I continued, scrolling to another email, is from Sophia to her friend Jenna, which she accidentally copied me on 3 years ago. I read it aloud. Ugh, saw another article about my sister, the tech genius. Mom was going on about it all day. As if being rich makes up for being such a freak growing up. Some people just have all the luck despite being totally socially inept. I paused, looking at Sophia. Charming Sophia. My sister's face flushed red. I didn't mean, oh, I think you did, I interrupted. But it's fine. Your opinion of me stopped mattering a long time ago. I closed the laptop and leaned forward, looking each of them in the eye. For 15 years, you have lived your lives as if I did not exist. You celebrated holidays, shared milestones, supported each other through hardships. You were a family in every sense of the word, just without me. And that was your choice. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden I had created, at the bench dedicated to Grandma Eleanor, the only family member who had ever truly loved me. Now you come here, to the home I built, to the life I created entirely without your help. And you talk about family as if it is something that can be picked up and put down whenever it becomes convenient or profitable. I turned back to face them. Let me be very clear. I do not need a family that only wants me when I have something to offer them. I do not need parents who only acknowledge me when I am successful. I do not need siblings who mock me behind my back but come asking for handouts. The color had drained from my father's face. My mother was crying silently, whether from genuine remorse or frustration at the failure of their plan, I couldn't tell. Philip stared at the floor, and Sophia sat rigid with anger or embarrassment, or both. That said, I continued, my voice softening slightly as I looked at the children, who appeared confused and uncomfortable. I do not believe in punishing children for the sins of their parents. I returned to my seat and addressed my niece and nephew directly. Jackson, Emma, I am your Aunt Olivia. We have never met before today, but that is not your fault. I would like to get to know you both if you're interested. The children looked to their mother for guidance, uncertain how to respond to this stranger claiming to be their aunt. And to that end, I said, returning my gaze to the adults, I will not be giving you $2 million to restart a family business that failed once already. I will not be signing over shares of my company to a family trust. Sophia's expression was a complex mixture of relief, disappointment, and wounded pride. We don't need your charity, she began. It's not charity, I cut her off. It is an investment in the only innocent parties in this room. The funds will be managed by my financial team and will only be accessible for educational expenses. You will have no access to the money. I stood, signaling that the meeting was coming to an end. That is my offer. Take it or leave it. My father stood as well, his face flushed with a familiar anger. After everything we did for you, what exactly did you do for me? I asked quietly. Remind me. We gave you a home when no one else would, he sputtered. We fed and clothed you, sent you to good schools. You did the legal minimum required of parents, I corrected him. And you made sure I knew every day that it was an obligation, not a choice made from love. The moment I was old enough to be cast out, you did exactly that. My mother rose, tears still streaming. Olivia, please. We made mistakes. We are sorry. Are you sorry for what you did, or sorry that I became successful without you? I asked, because those are very different things. She had no answer. I think it is time for you to go, I said gently but firmly. My assistant will contact you regarding the education funds for the children, if you choose to accept them. Otherwise, I wish you all well in your future endeavors. I walked them to the door, maintaining my composure through sheer force of will. As they stepped outside, Sophia turned back, her expression softer than I had seen it in decades. For what it's worth, she said quietly. I am proud of what you've accomplished. I really am. Too little, too late. but I nodded acknowledgement of her words. Take care of your children, Sophia, I replied. They deserve better than what we had. I closed the door on my past and leaned against it, finally allowing the tears to come. They weren't tears of sadness or regret, but of release. In facing my family, in refusing to be manipulated by them again, I had finally freed myself from the last chains of their approval. I pulled out my phone and dialed the one person I knew would understand. Diana, it's Olivia. Can you come over? My family just left and I need a friend right now. As I waited for Diana to arrive, I looked around at the beautiful home I had created, at the life I had built from nothing but determination and the belief that I deserved better. For the first time, I truly believed that Grandma Eleanor would be proud of the woman I had become, not just for my success, but for finding the strength to stand up for myself. The sound of tires on the driveway announced Diana's arrival just 30 minutes after my call. One of the things I valued most about our friendship was her unfailing reliability. When I needed her, she was there, no questions asked. She found me in the garden, sitting on Grandma Eleanor's bench, the ruby ring gleaming on my finger as I twisted it absently, a habit I developed when deep in thought. Hey, she said softly, sitting beside me. Rough day. I smiled weakly. You could say that. I recounted the entire encounter, from seeing them on the security camera to their final departure. Diana listened without interruption, her face reflecting my own emotions as the story unfolded. $2 million in shares in your company, she repeated when I finished. The audacity is almost impressive. That startled a laugh out of me, right? After 15 years of radio silence, they show up expecting a handout, as if all the years of exclusion and cruelty never happened. But you stood your ground, Diana said, squeezing my hand. You offered help to the children without letting the adults manipulate you. That took courage. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garden. The emotional upheaval of the day had left me drained, but also strangely at peace. You know what the strangest part is? I said finally. For years, I fantasized about a moment like this, about them seeing my success and regretting how they treated me. But now that it's happened, it feels empty somehow. Their regret, if they even feel it, doesn't change anything. Diana nodded thoughtfully. Because you've realized that their approval was never the prize you thought it was. Her words resonated with the truth I had been slowly discovering over the years. Exactly. I spent so much of my life trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Building this company, this fortune. Part of me was still that little girl trying to prove I was worthy of being loved. And now? Diana prompted. Now I know that was never the problem. Their inability to love me was their failure, not mine. No amount of success on my part could ever fix what was broken in them. In the days that followed, I experienced a range of emotions, from residual anger to unexpected grief for the family relationships I had never truly had. But beneath it all was a growing sense of liberation. The last lingering hope that they might someday acknowledge their wrongdoing, that we might somehow become a real family, had been laid to rest. That fantasy had been holding me back in ways I hadn't fully recognized. A week after their visit, I made a decision that would change the course of not just my life, but potentially many others. I established the Eleanor Grace Foundation, named for my grandmother, dedicated to supporting children in the foster care system, particularly those who had been adopted and then rejected or mistreated by their adoptive families. The foundation would provide not just financial assistance for education and basic needs, but also psychological support, mentorship programs, and legal advocacy. I committed $50 million as initial funding and pledged to personally oversee its operations alongside my duties at Secure Now. During the planning stages, I reconnected with Jordan, my former roommate who now taught literature at Stanford. Over coffee, I shared my vision for the foundation and my personal connection to its mission. I never knew, she said, visibly moved by my story. All those years we lived together, I had no idea what you had been through. I was good at hiding it, I admitted. I didn't want anyone's pity. It's not pity to let people care about you, Olivia, she said gently. It's human connection, something I think you've been denying yourself for too long. Her words stayed with me, prompting a period of deep reflection. I had built walls to protect myself from further rejection, but those same walls had kept out the genuine connections I craved. My success, my wealth, even my charitable work, none of it could substitute for authentic human relationships. True to my word, I established the education funds for Jackson and Emma. Sophia accepted them with a stiff email of thanks. It was not reconciliation, but it was a small bridge to the next generation, a chance to break the cycle of emotional neglect that had characterized my own childhood. 3 months after my family's visit, I joined a support group for adults who had experienced family estrangement. Sitting in a circle with others who had similar stories, I found a level of understanding I hadn't experienced before. These were people who knew firsthand the particular pain of being rejected by those who should have loved them unconditionally. Family is not always blood, said one woman during a particularly powerful session. Family is who loves you when you need it most. This simple statement crystallized something I had been learning gradually over the years. Looking around at the lives I had touched and those who had touched mine, I realized I had built a family of choice, one far more nurturing than the one I had been born into. There was Diana, who had believed in me when I was just a nervous young woman at a tech workshop. Travis, who had taken a chance on my ideas when 27 other investors had said no. My executive team at Secure Now, who had stood by me through the company's growth and challenges. The children benefiting from my foundation's programs, whose letters and artwork now decorated a wall in my home office. 6 months after the confrontation with my biological family, I decided to host a gathering at my Atherton estate. Not a formal charity gala or business function, but a simple celebration of connection. I invited everyone who had become important to me over the years, from Diana and her family to my first roommates in San Francisco, from Travis and his wife to members of my support group. The house and gardens were filled with laughter and conversation, with people who knew my story and accepted me as I was, flaws and all. As I looked around at these diverse individuals who had chosen to be part of my life, I felt a sense of belonging I had searched for my entire life. Late in the evening, I found a quiet moment alone on Grandma Eleanor's bench. The ruby ring caught the light from the garden lanterns, sparkling with the same warmth I remembered in her eyes. I could almost hear her voice. True family is about love, not blood. She had been right all along. Blood ties may be the beginning of family, but they are not its definition. Family is built through love, respect, and choices made day after day to show up for one another. It cannot be measured by DNA or legal documents, but by the depth of connection and the safety found in each other's presence. My journey from rejected child to successful businesswoman had been driven, partly, by a desire to prove my worth to those who had discarded me. But the true transformation came when I realized that my worth had never been in question, only their ability to see it. The family that had once defined me by my absence had lost their power over my happiness. In their place was a community of chosen family, people who had earned their place in my life through their actions, not their blood relation. As I sat in my garden, surrounded by the life I had built and the people who had helped me build it, I felt at peace in a way I never had before. The wounds of the past would always be part of my story, but they no longer defined my future. The ruby ring on my finger was no longer just a reminder of the one person from my biological family who had truly loved me. It had become a symbol of the truth I had learned through pain and triumph, that we all have the power to create our own definitions of family, to build connections based on genuine love rather than obligation. For anyone out there who has felt the sting of family rejection, who has wondered if something is inherently wrong with them because the people who should love them the most have turned away, I want you to know this. Your worth is not determined by those who failed to see it. You deserve love. You deserve belonging. And you have the power to create a family of the heart that will cherish you exactly as you are.